The vast, starry expanse of space had always been home to countless species, civilizations, and beings of unimaginable power. But none of them had ever encountered a species quite like humanity. While many races had their own histories of war and peace, humanity's story was far more complex, and it was about to be revealed to the most powerful alien empire the galaxy had ever known. The alien ship approached Earth's orbit with the elegance of a predator closing in on its prey. Massive, sleek, and glowing with an otherworldly light, it cut through space with a quiet confidence. The inhabitants of the ship, the Xantharians, had traveled across thousands of light years, knowing that their mission was important. They were here to make contact with the humans. They expected little resistance. After all, Earth had been silent for so long. The Xantharians had studied the humans from afar, observing their primitive technology, their disjointed societies, and their obsession with peace. Peace was something the Xantharians had mastered long ago. Their empire stretched across the stars, spanning dozens of galaxies. They had conquered and assimilated countless races, bringing them into their fold, all without shedding a single drop of blood. They believed themselves to be a superior species, far beyond the violent tendencies of younger civilizations. Peace was their gift to the galaxy, and they were certain humanity would accept it willingly. The first message they sent to Earth was simple. It wasn't a demand, but a greeting. We come in peace. Join us, and your civilization will know prosperity like no other. However, this peaceful message was met with silence. The Xantharians were perplexed. Surely, the humans, with their advanced weapons and technological prowess, would welcome their aid, right? But still, no response. It was as if Earth itself had turned its back on them. On the other side of the world, Earth's military leaders convened. They had been briefed on the Xantharians' peaceful nature, but something didn't feel right. The silence wasn't from fear, it was from suspicion. The humans knew the Xantharians were no ordinary race. Their ships, their technology, their power, they were too perfect. Humans were a proud species. They had fought countless wars, survived brutal history, and had built their civilization from the ashes of their past. They did not take kindly to being ignored or underestimated. It was then that a decision was made. If the Xantharians wanted to meet humanity, they would meet humanity on Earth's terms. The military called upon Sergeant Michael "Doc" Harrison, a decorated Marine, and one of the most experienced officers in the fleet. He was no stranger to combat, but his reputation went beyond the battlefield. Doc had seen things that would break any ordinary man, but he had survived. And he understood humanity better than anyone. He knew that when it came to survival, humans would do whatever it took. And if the Xantharians underestimated that fact, they were in for a rude awakening. Doc stood before his superior officers, staring down at the holographic images of the Xantharians' ships hovering over Earth. His expression was unreadable, his jaw clenched. "We'll let them think we're weak," he said in a low voice, "but we won't let them forget who we are." His words carried a heavy weight. Doc wasn't just a soldier. He was humanity's last line of defense. If the Xantharians were here to conquer, they would soon learn that humanity had fought wars in ways they couldn't possibly understand. The plan was set into motion. The Xantharian ship would land, and Earth's finest would meet them on the ground. The humans would send a simple delegation, led by Doc himself, to the landing site. There was no need for violence, not yet. But the Xantharians needed to understand one thing above all else. Earth was not a planet to be taken lightly. As the Xantharians touched down, their ship glided effortlessly over the Earth's surface, casting an enormous shadow across the land. The humans stood at attention, their weapons holstered, their faces serious. They had prepared for this day for years, but nothing could have truly prepared them for what was about to happen. The Xantharians exited their ship, their tall, imposing figures shrouded in glowing armor. They were a race of beings whose very presence seemed to command authority. But as they approached the humans, they saw something in their eyes that they had not expected. A quiet resolve, a fire that burned deep within every human present. Doc stepped forward. He was a tall man, his face hardened by years of service, his eyes reflecting the weight of a past that no alien could understand. He met the lead Xantharian's gaze, his voice steady. "You've come to Earth. You think you know us, but you don't." The Xantharians looked at him, their faces blank, their minds already calculating the response. "We offer peace," the Xantharian leader said, their voice reverberating with calm authority. "Join us, and your species will ascend." Doc shook his head slowly. "You don't get it," he said, his voice sharp. "Peace is never given. It's earned. You want peace. You'll have to fight for it." The Xantharians faltered, a flicker of confusion passing between them. They had never encountered this kind of response before. Was this humanity's way of accepting peace, or was it something more? The tension in the air was palpable. Doc's words had struck a chord. The Xantharians were beginning to realize that humanity was not what they thought it was. And as they looked around, they saw it in every human face. The unspoken truth that even peace for humanity could be a weapon. The first contact had been made. But this was just the beginning. The Xantharians were about to learn what it truly meant to underestimate humanity, and how the price of underestimating Earth's warriors was higher than they could ever imagine. The Xantharians had barely set foot on Earth when the realization started to dawn on them. The humans they had underestimated were not what they seemed. Their initial calm, peaceful demeanor was starting to crack, and it was all thanks to one human. Sergeant Michael "Doc" Harrison. The Xantharians stood tall in their flawless, glowing armor. They were powerful beings, with technology far beyond human comprehension. Yet, standing before them was one man, just a soldier, no different from any other human. Yet he carried an aura of quiet strength and unwavering confidence that made the alien leaders feel uneasy. His words had struck them, but they didn't fully understand the weight of what he had said. What did he mean by "peace is earned"? What was he trying to imply with his mention of war? The lead Xantharian, a towering figure with a crown of shimmering light on his head, stepped forward. His voice echoed with power as he addressed Doc. "Your species has endured much conflict. You should be grateful for the opportunity to join us in peace. Why do you resist it?" Doc's eyes narrowed as he took a step closer, his expression calm but intense. "We don't resist peace," he said, his voice unwavering. "But we know better than to accept it without knowing the price." The Xantharians, despite their advanced knowledge and seemingly superior intellect, had never encountered a race like humans. They assumed humanity had no true understanding of war, of the kind of war that could tear galaxies apart. They had studied Earth's history from a distance, and all they had seen were scattered conflicts between different nations, nothing that truly matched the scale of what the Xantharians themselves had experienced. Doc could sense the Xantharians' confusion, and it fueled the quiet tension building in the air. It wasn't just a simple misunderstanding anymore. It was a battle of ideologies. The Xantharians believed that they were the benevolent rulers of the galaxy, spreading peace to all corners of the universe. In contrast, Doc understood the true nature of peace. It wasn't something to be handed over on a silver platter. Peace had to be earned, fought for, and respected. If the Xantharians thought they could simply offer peace without understanding the sacrifices humans had made to achieve it, they were gravely mistaken. The human soldiers surrounding Doc stood at attention, but there was an underlying unease in their posture. They knew their mission wasn't just about negotiation. It was about ensuring that Earth would not fall under the rule of a superior alien race, no matter how noble their intentions might seem. Humanity had fought too hard for its freedom to let it be taken away by anyone, even a race as advanced as the Xantharians. "Do you think your history of war makes you strong?" the Xantharian leader asked, his tone condescending. Doc's response was immediate, and it hit the alien leader like a wave crashing onto a beach. "Our history isn't what makes us strong," Doc said, his voice steady. "What makes us strong is the fact that we learn from it. We adapt. and we never forget what it cost us." The alien leader paused, visibly taken aback by Doc's words. They hadn't expected such an honest, unyielding response. The Xantharians believed themselves to be the keepers of wisdom, the bearers of peace. They didn't understand that true peace came at the cost of immense suffering. Doc wasn't simply talking about the wars humans had fought. He was talking about the consequences of every war, of the innocent lives lost, of the devastation caused, and the lessons learned from those tragedies. One of the other Xantharian commanders, more brash and impatient than his leader, spoke up. "Enough words. If your species is so proud of its war-driven history, then we'll show you what true power is. We will demonstrate why you should kneel before us." Doc's hand tightened around the grip of his weapon at his side. He had been expecting this. The Xantharians didn't understand the fine line between peace and war. They saw only the brutal force that had allowed them to rule so many galaxies. They thought that by showcasing their power, they could intimidate humanity into submission. But they were wrong. Humanity had faced unimaginable odds and survived. They had fought wars that left scars deep in their souls, and yet they stood unbroken. "Go ahead," Doc said quietly, a fire burning in his eyes. "Show us your power. But know this, you don't get to make the rules here. Not on Earth." The Xantharians' leader grew tense, realizing that this wasn't the response they were expecting. They had expected fear, submission, or at least some kind of surrender. What they didn't realize was that Earth had a different kind of strength. The strength to stand its ground, to face overwhelming odds, and to never back down. The alien leader glanced at his commanders, who were now unsure of how to proceed. The arrogance that had once guided them in their belief that humanity was weak was now slipping away. They were starting to understand that there was something about Earth's people that made them far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. It wasn't just their weapons, it was their indomitable will to fight for what was theirs. And no matter how much superior technology or power the Xantharians had, it was a force they hadn't yet reckoned with. For the first time, the Xantharians began to realize that humanity's strength didn't come from their military might alone. It came from something deeper, something harder to quantify, a spirit that no alien power could crush. And as the tension continued to build between the humans and the Xantharians, one thing became abundantly clear. The true battle was only just beginning. The standoff between humanity and the Xantharians was thick with tension, a quiet, oppressive force hanging in the air. For the Xantharians, it was supposed to be an easy mission, a peaceful introduction to a race they believed to be primitive and unworthy of any significant challenge. They had seen the scars of humanity's wars on their home planet, and in their minds, that made humans easy targets. But they had severely misjudged their enemy. Sergeant Michael "Doc" Harrison stood still, unshaken, facing the leader of the Xantharians. His hand was still resting near his weapon, but there was no sign of aggression, only the quiet certainty of someone who had faced much worse and emerged victorious. The soldiers behind him mirrored his stoic stance, each of them seasoned by combat, but not eager for it. They understood what was at stake, not just their lives, but the future of Earth itself. The Xantharians' leader stared at Doc, his calm exterior faltering for a moment. The arrogance that had once guided him was now dissipating in the face of humanity's unyielding resolve. He had not expected this reaction. Humans, in his mind, were just another race to be conquered, another planet to add to the Xantharian Empire's vast dominion. But now, something was different. Something deep in the human spirit unsettled him. The alien leader turned to his second-in-command, his voice low, just loud enough for his subordinates to hear. "We were wrong to underestimate them. This human does not fear us." The second-in-command nodded, eyeing the humans carefully. "No, they seem to carry something different." Doc glanced at the Xantharians, his voice cutting through the uneasy silence. "You don't understand, do you? You think that just because you have the power to destroy, you've already won. But you're forgetting one thing." The Xantharians listened intently, though their pride made them hesitate to show any sign of concern. The leader, still determined, asked, "What is it you think we've forgotten?" "We've been to hell and back," Doc said, his voice low but carrying an undeniable strength. "We don't need your power to survive. We've already survived our own worst nightmares." The Syntherians' confusion grew as they exchanged glances. What did this human mean? The word survive seemed almost too simple for a race like humanity, whose history was riddled with conflict and suffering. But Doc's words, calm and deliberate, were starting to pierce through their arrogance. "You're not hearing me," Doc continued. "You've studied our wars, our battles, our pain. But you've never truly understood what it costs us. You see, humans don't just fight for land, or power, or riches. We fight for something deeper, something you can't measure with your advanced technology or military might. We fight for each other, for the ones we love. And that is a force you can't defeat." The Syntherians stood in stunned silence. They had expected their overwhelming power to cow humanity into submission. But instead, they were confronted with something more dangerous. A force of will so strong, so ingrained in the human psyche, that it rendered their technology and might irrelevant. One of the Syntherians, a younger officer still eager for a fight, spoke up, his voice filled with anger. "Enough talk. We are the superior race. We will crush you, just as we've crushed all others." Doc turned his gaze to the young officer, his eyes piercing with a calm intensity. "You'll try," he said simply, "but you won't win. You won't even understand why you lost." The young officer sneered and raised his weapon. His hand hovered above the trigger, ready to unleash destruction. But before he could act, the Syntherian leader stepped forward, raising a hand to stop him. "Hold," the leader commanded, his voice authoritative, but also laced with a hint of uncertainty. "This is not what we came here for." There was a moment of quiet as the two sides faced each other, neither willing to make the first move. Doc knew this was the moment that would define humanity's future. The Syntherians were stronger, yes, but they were no match for the strength of human resolve, the power that had seen countless civilizations through the darkest times. The alien leader looked back at his warriors. "We have underestimated them," he said, his voice still echoing with doubt. "We will need more than weapons to break their spirit." Doc's lips curled into a faint smile, but it was not one of satisfaction. Rather, it was the smile of someone who knew a fight had only just begun. "You don't understand, do you?" he said quietly. "You can break our bodies, but our spirit, our resolve, that will never break." The Syntherian leader's expression darkened. The humans were proving to be something he had never encountered before, something far beyond the reach of his superior race's grasp. They were resilient in ways that no other species had ever been. And despite all their power, they were realizing that perhaps it wasn't just weapons that won wars, it was the heart of those fighting. Doc didn't speak again. He simply stood tall, his eyes unwavering, his soldiers standing alongside him. No one moved. The tension was unbearable, the future of Earth hanging in the balance. The Syntherians, once so sure of their dominance, were now at a crossroads. The path they chose would decide whether they would conquer this world or face the consequences of underestimating humanity. And in the end, the Syntherians had one choice: to learn from their mistakes or to fall to the very force they had failed to understand. The alien leader, still grappling with the overwhelming power of humanity's spirit, made a calculated decision. He ordered his soldiers to lower their weapons, signaling a brief moment of peace. But the tension was far from gone. In the air, there was an unspoken question. Could this fragile peace hold, or was the inevitable conflict merely delayed? Doc's eyes scanned the alien forces, each soldier standing rigid yet uncertain. The leader's command had not been an act of mercy, but a tactical decision. He wanted to see how far humanity was willing to go, what they were truly capable of. What had begun as a test of force had now become a question of endurance. The Syntherians had always believed themselves to be the superior race. Their technology was unmatched, their military might overwhelming. They had conquered dozens of planets, their methods ruthless but effective. They had never encountered a species like humans, one that fought with an intensity and resilience that transcended the physical realm. Doc was the perfect embodiment of that resilience. A Marine through and through, he had fought in countless wars, each more brutal than the last. Yet his greatest weapon was not the rifle slung across his back or the combat training etched into his muscle memory. It was his understanding of what war truly meant. Humanity didn't fight for conquest. They didn't fight for riches or territory. They fought for each other, for the survival of their families, their friends, and their entire species. And that the Xantharians realized too late was something they could never comprehend. Doc stood still, his face impassive, but his mind was racing. He knew the Xantharians hadn't given up, not yet. They were calculating, always seeking a way to gain the upper hand. The peace might only be temporary, a lull before the storm. But for now, he had to make them understand something. Something they had never learned in all their years of conquering. Humanity would not yield. The alien leader, who had remained silent for several moments, finally spoke again. His voice was filled with a mixture of frustration and awe. "You've proven your strength, but we are not like the other races you faced. We are the Xantharians. You cannot hope to defeat us with your resolve alone." Doc's response was calm, measured, but it carried the weight of centuries of human history. "You don't understand. We don't fight with force alone. You think you're strong because of your technology, your weapons. But those things will fail when it matters most." The Xantharian leader's expression darkened. "What are you saying?" Doc leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "What you're forgetting is that we don't just fight with weapons. We fight with our minds, our hearts, and our will to survive. We've survived everything. We've fought wars against ourselves and against the worst of enemies. You think you can break us, but you don't know what we're capable of." The silence was palpable. The Xantharians had encountered countless species, each with its own unique strength, but none had ever spoken with such unwavering confidence, such resolute belief in their own survival. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't in their guns or bombs. It was in their unshakable determination, the knowledge that no matter the odds, they would rise again. The alien leader glanced at his second-in-command. "This human speaks of something different. What is it?" The second-in-command, who had been silent throughout the exchange, stepped forward. "They believe in something more than victory, more than domination. Perhaps they believe in survival above all else." The leader's eyes flickered with realization. He had heard of such concepts before, but only in the theoretical works of other species. He had never truly believed that a race could be so driven by something as intangible as willpower. Doc, sensing the shift in the air, spoke again. "If you attack us, you'll regret it. We will make you regret it." The Xantharians were silent. Doc's words echoed through their minds, striking at something deep within them. This wasn't a threat based on military might or advanced technology. It was something far more terrifying. The threat of an enemy that would never surrender, no matter the cost. The alien leader took a step back, his gaze fixed on Doc. "You are a dangerous species, human." Doc didn't flinch. "You've only just learned that." The silence stretched on. The Xantharians, once certain of their inevitable victory, now found themselves questioning their understanding of power. Could they conquer humanity, or would they find themselves facing something they could never defeat? Doc turned to his men, his voice calm and commanding. "Stay sharp. They may have backed down now, but that doesn't mean we're out of danger. We've just shown them who we are." As the tension lingered in the air, the Xantharians watched humanity with newfound wariness. They had thought they were the invincible ones, but now they understood. Humans were not just another species to be defeated. They were something else entirely, something far more dangerous. The true cost of underestimating humanity had just begun to sink in, and the Xantharians knew one thing for sure: if they dared to make the wrong move, They would come to understand exactly why humanity had earned its place in the stars. But that was a lesson they would learn the hard way. And by then, it might be too late for them to turn back. The uneasy silence that filled the air between the two forces grew thicker with each passing moment. Doc stood firm, his expression unreadable, but the weight of his words had landed. He had shown them just how far humanity would go to survive, and he knew that the aliens would not take this lesson lightly. The Xantharians may have been technologically superior, but they were now aware of a deeper force at play, the strength of humanity's unyielding spirit. Doc's words had struck a chord, not just with their leader, but with the entire alien delegation. They were used to calculating their victories based on weapons, force, and intimidation. But what they hadn't accounted for was the resolve of a species that had fought, bled, and survived through the most unimaginable challenges. The alien leader's eyes shifted from Doc to the quiet ranks of human soldiers. A strange unease rippled through him. In all their conquests, no species had ever stood so unwavering in the face of overwhelming odds. He had underestimated humanity. Doc could sense the shift in the air, the uncertainty now visible on the Xantharians' faces. It was a rare thing to see a superior race shaken, even for a brief moment. And for the first time since the confrontation began, the alien leader hesitated. His usual confidence faltered, and it was in this moment of uncertainty that the true danger of underestimating humanity became evident. "We have been wrong," the Xantharian leader said, almost to himself. He looked at his soldiers, who remained motionless, as if frozen in time. The threat was no longer coming from their weapons or technology, but from the humans' unwavering belief in themselves. The Xantharians had been built on domination, but humanity was built on survival. And that made them dangerous in a way no advanced weapon could replicate. Doc studied the leader's face carefully. He saw the shift, the internal struggle, but he knew that the aliens were not going to back down easily. They would regroup, recalibrate, and find a way to regain control. It was only a matter of time before they made their next move. The question was, would humanity be ready for it? He turned to his team. "Stay vigilant," he said in a low, commanding voice. "This isn't over. They may have backed off now, but we have to be prepared for whatever comes next." His team nodded in unison, the seriousness of the situation settling over them. They understood that this was not just a battle of forces, but a battle of wills, and humanity's will had already proven itself stronger than the aliens had anticipated. Doc's thoughts turned inward for a moment. He couldn't shake the feeling that the Xantharians were planning something. They had been so sure of their victory just hours ago. And now, they were learning that humanity was not a species to be taken lightly. But Doc also knew that they wouldn't simply give up. The peace between the two sides might be temporary, but the war was far from over. The Xantharians had underestimated the depths of human resilience. They had thought of humans as a primitive species, more likely to cower in fear than to stand their ground. But they had not reckoned with the depths of human determination, a determination that went beyond the physical. Doc had shown them that humanity would not surrender, no matter the cost. As the two forces stood facing one another, neither side made a move. But beneath the surface, the tension was palpable. The Xantharians were now fully aware of the stakes. They had not just faced a force of nature in the form of humanity. They had awakened something deep within themselves. Doc glanced at his men, feeling the weight of the moment pressing down on them. He knew that this battle was about more than just weapons. It was about showing the Xantharians the true strength of humanity. It was about showing them that even in the face of death, humans would fight for what mattered most, for the survival of their kind, for their families, and for their future. The Xantharians had underestimated humanity once, but now they knew better. They had seen the power of human will, and that was something they could never truly conquer. But the question remained, what would the Xantharians do now that they understood this power? Would they take the fight to the next level, or would they attempt to retreat? Doc knew the answer would come soon enough, and when it did, humanity would be ready. The air around the two forces remained thick with tension. Doc's words had left an impact on the Syntherian delegation, but this only marked the beginning of a new chapter in the ongoing confrontation. The uneasy silence dragged on, stretching the already tight nerves of both sides. The human soldiers stood stoic and alert, but in the back of their minds, they all knew that the true test of their resilience was yet to come. The Syntherians, once so sure of their superiority, now found themselves in uncharted territory. The alien leader, who had been so quick to dismiss humanity as a mere obstacle, now found himself questioning everything. What had once seemed like an easy conquest was turning into a complex problem. Their technology was advanced, their armies strong, but there was something about humanity that had completely thrown them off balance, something they couldn't measure on any of their scanners, nor anticipate with their battle tactics. We underestimated them, the Syntherian leader muttered under his breath, his voice low but tinged with frustration. His eyes scanned the human ranks once more, and for the first time, there was doubt in his gaze. He had seen the fire in their eyes, the quiet, unwavering confidence that shone through despite the overwhelming odds. The power of humanity's spirit had become clear to him. What had once been dismissed as a threat now felt like an undeniable force. Doc stood at the front of his troops, never taking his eyes off the alien leader. He knew that their reaction would define the next step of this deadly dance. The Syntherians could no longer afford to take humanity lightly. They had made a mistake, and in the brutal theater of war, mistakes had consequences. You have no idea what you've just provoked, Doc thought, his hand tightening around the hilt of his sidearm. The Syntherians had their own power, their weapons, their technology, but humans had something more. They had grit, resolve, and an unbreakable will. That was something that no amount of firepower could defeat. For now, it seemed as though the two forces were locked in a fragile stalemate. The alien leader knew his next move was critical. He could retreat, regroup, and come back with a more forceful strategy. Or he could risk everything by striking now, hoping that the human show of strength was just a momentary bluff. As the silence stretched on, Doc felt the weight of the decision they were about to face. He could sense it in the air. The Syntherians were going to act soon. This was the calm before the storm. His mind raced with possible outcomes. Humanity had survived far worse than this, but that didn't mean the coming battle would be without its cost. No matter what happened, the next phase would test humanity's true strength, both physically and mentally. And Doc had no intention of letting humanity back down now. "Prepare yourselves," he whispered to his team, his voice barely audible over the hum of distant machinery and the rustling of tense bodies. The soldiers tightened their grips on their weapons, ready to move at a moment's notice. There was no turning back now. The Syntherian leader turned away, giving a sharp order to his officers. The moment had arrived. The calm was over. The Syntherians began to mobilize, preparing their forces for what would come next. The first step was to demonstrate their overwhelming power, to show humanity that this had never been about negotiation. But Doc and his soldiers were prepared. They had learned from the past, and they would not be easily intimidated. The Syntherians, now aware of humanity's strength, couldn't help but respect the resolve they saw in every human soldier's eyes. They were not prepared for this. Doc took one last look at the leader of the alien force. Let them come, he thought. We've waited long enough. In that moment, everything was clear. Humanity had shown their hand. Now it was time for the Syntherians to make theirs. The stage was set for the ultimate clash. But one thing was certain. No matter the outcome, humanity would never back down again. The Syntherians had been warned. They had made a grave mistake underestimating the human spirit. And now, they would pay the price. The storm was about to break, and Doc's only hope was that humanity could weather it. The battlefield had transformed into a tense arena of waiting, where every soldier knew that the next few moments would define the fate of humanity. Doc stood at the front of his team, his eyes locked on the alien leader, who had already given orders for the Syntherian forces to prepare. The air was thick with the smell of anticipation, and all around, humanity's best and brightest were waiting for the inevitable clash. It wasn't just the soldiers on the front lines who were ready, it was the entire human race. The Xantharians had underestimated them. They thought humanity was nothing more than a weak species. They thought the strength of Earth was limited to its military might. But what the aliens didn't know, what they couldn't possibly understand, was the depth of humanity's will to survive. The concept of survival had been embedded in every aspect of human culture, from ancient myths to modern realities. The very heart of humanity beat to the rhythm of survival. Doc's thoughts were interrupted by the sharp sound of the Xantharian commander's voice. He was speaking through the comms, trying to make one last attempt at diplomacy. "You are outmatched, human," the alien commander said, his voice carrying a mix of mockery and disbelief. "Your primitive weapons are no match for our technology. Your war crimes are nothing compared to the horrors we've seen. Surrender now, and we will show mercy." Doc didn't respond immediately. He glanced at his team, each one of them locked in their position, eyes scanning the horizon. His soldiers were calm, composed, but there was an undeniable readiness in the way they held their weapons, their posture. They were prepared to defend their home at all costs. Then Doc spoke, his voice steady and cold. "Mercy is something you don't deserve. You have no idea what you've provoked. You'll learn the meaning of true war, the kind that doesn't end until every last one of you is defeated. No one threatens Earth's peace and walks away." There was no more room for words. The Xantharians had made their decision, and humanity had made theirs. The Xantharians were no longer negotiating. They were preparing for battle, just as humanity was. Both sides stood at the edge of the abyss, and neither would blink first. In the command center, humanity's military leaders watched closely, waiting for the signal. They knew that once the first shot was fired, there would be no going back. The Xantharians had made a grave error underestimating the human spirit, but now they would witness just how deadly that spirit could be. Doc raised his hand, signaling the soldiers to move. The moment had arrived. The first salvo from the Xantharian weapons pierced the air, a brilliant display of alien firepower that left a streak of light in its wake. It was a clear statement of aggression. But humanity had long prepared for this moment. With swift coordination, the human forces countered. The Xantharians thought their technology could overwhelm them, but they were wrong. The human will to fight was a force that no weapon could anticipate. As explosions rocked the battlefield and the first clashes between human and alien forces began, Doc couldn't help but think back to the moment when he first spoke the truth to the Xantharians. He had been telling them that humanity was no longer willing to negotiate. He had made them aware that Earth had a secret power, a force beyond weapons and technology. It was the strength of their collective will, their bond with each other, and their unyielding desire to protect what was theirs. The Xantharians had thought they could defeat humanity with sheer force, but what they didn't realize was that humans had a power that no one could measure. The will to fight for their future, for their families, for their planet, was beyond the reach of any alien race, and as the battle unfolded before him, Doc could see that humanity was not just surviving, they were winning. As the smoke cleared, the alien commander found himself once again face to face with the human forces. He had underestimated humanity, and now he was seeing the consequences. The Xantharians had pushed too far, and there would be no retreat. Doc locked eyes with the alien leader, his expression resolute. "This is what happens when you push us too far. We don't stop. Ever." And with that, the battle for Earth began.